June 1st, 2018, Beaverton, Oregon. Nancy sat in the dim light of her bedroom, the glow of her laptop illuminating a face etched with frustration. At 68, she was a veteran of the romance genre, having self-published 11 novels. But tonight, the words wouldn't come. The happily ever after she sold to her readers was nowhere to be found in her own home. Her husband, Dan Brophy, was the polar opposite of a romance hero. He was a gruff, blunt, and highly respected chef at the Oregon Culinary Institute for 25 years. They were the perfect couple, but behind the closed doors of their attic bedroom, the ink was running dry. Nancy's passion was writing, but her reality was dead. Despite 11 books, she had never secured a major publisher. Her novels were freebies online, and her bank account was a hollow shell. She worked for Medicare to pay the bills. A day job she grew to loathe with every passing chapter. 2 years prior, the Brophies hit a wall. Credit card debt had spiraled. They were raiding retirement accounts just to keep the roof over their heads. Nancy saw the walls closing in. She needed a way out, a plot twist that would provide the financial stability she felt she deserved. They called themselves soulmates. Dan's love language was food. He'd forage for mushrooms and raise chickens just to provide the best ingredients for Nancy, but Nancy's love language had become something much more transactional. She began to view Dan not as a partner, but as a liability. In 2011, years before the tragedy, Nancy posted a blog titled "How to Murder Your Husband." At the time, people thought it was a cheeky marketing ploy for a thriller writer. She listed motives: financial, lying, or falling in love with someone else. Little did the world know, she was taking notes. June 2nd, 2018, 5:00 a.m. The sound of Dan, moving around the bathroom usually, signaled the start of a normal day. He had to prep his kitchen at the Institute. But Nancy wasn't sleeping. She was trapped in a negative thought loop, or perhaps she was just waiting for the right moment to start her car. Nancy told everyone she went for a drive to clear, writer's block. She claimed she was admiring the beautiful tree-lined streets of Portland. But security cameras, the silent witnesses, she failed to account for. Saw her old minivan circling the Culinary Institute at the exact time Dan arrived. Dan entered the Institute alone. The kitchen was quiet. He was likely prepping his stations, focused on the day's lesson. He didn't hear the footsteps. He didn't see the person standing in the shadows. He was shot twice, once in the back and once in the chest. At 10 a.m., Nancy's phone rings. It's a colleague from the school. There's been a shooting. Nancy, Dan isn't answering. Nancy plays the part of the confused, worried wife. She tells the colleague Dan is probably just busy, but her heart is racing for a very different reason. Nancy arrives at the scene. Helicopters circle above. Police tape flickers in the wind. She sees Dan's colleagues, but they can't look her in the eye. The air is thick with the tragedy that Nancy herself had authored. The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice. Two men in dark suits approach. Nancy, your husband was the victim. The words she had written 1,000 times in fiction were now being spoken to her in reality. Dan was dead. The kitchen floor was his final resting place. In the wake of the murder, Nancy had a theory ready. Dan was gruff, she told people. He rubbed people the wrong way. Maybe a student snapped. She even pointed toward the homeless crisis in Portland, suggesting a random act of violence. It was a classic whodunit distraction. For 2 months, Nancy played the grieving widow, but the blank mind she complained of didn't stop her from trying to collect. She began filing for life insurance policies, immediately policies that totaled over $1.4 million. Detectives were puzzled. There were no security cameras inside the kitchen, no witnesses, but they found a digital trail. Nancy had been researching ghost guns and had purchased separate slide and barrel for a Glock 17 on eBay. Why buy a separate barrel? To ensure the ballistics wouldn't match the gun she owned. She thought she was being clever. She thought she was writing a plot hole-free mystery. She replaced the barrel, committed the crime, and then put the original barrel back. September 5th, 2018, a police cruiser pulls into Nancy's driveway. She expects an update on the killer. Instead, the detectives tell her they found something on the internet, something she wrote years ago. They confront her with the blog post, "How to Murder Your Husband." In it, She wrote, "The thing I know about murder is that every one of us have it in him." Her. When pushed far enough, the police weren't looking for a student anymore. They were looking at the author. Nancy Crampton Brophy is taken into custody. The community is in shock. The romance writer was now the lead antagonist in a real-life homicide case. The motive? Cult. Hard cash and the freedom to write full-time without the burden of a husband. During the trial, the defense argued the blog post was just creative. Exercise. They argued the gun. Parts were of research for a new book, but the jury saw the surveillance of her van. They saw the 1.4 million reasons she wanted Dan gone. The jury didn't buy the struggling writer act. They saw a woman who valued her fantasy life more than her husband's life. Nancy was found guilty of second-degree murder. The woman who wrote about happy endings was sentenced to life in prison. Nancy wanted to be a famous, financially stable writer. She achieved fame, but not for her prose. She's now in a cell with all the time in the world to write, but no audience left to listen. The soulmate she murdered is the only reason anyone remembers her name. The voice you selected does not support this language. Please click the upper right corner to switch to another voice.